Hey guys, in this video we're going to be painting this very cute little pumpkin harvest gnome guy. To start, make sure you have, I've got all kinds of different brushes. You're probably going to want something maybe about this size, maybe something a little bit smaller, and maybe something kind of big. Also, paper towels, jar of water, and you're going to want to get your paints all put out on your plate. I'm going to get started. I'm going to be using this kind of medium-sized brush, and I'm going to just paint my beard, just using white paint. And this is going to take a couple of coats, so don't gob it on. You're going to want nice, thin, even coat of paint. While you work, because we want the beard edge to be fluffy, you're going to kind of use the side of your brush and angle out to make like little furs. It's important that you do this while you're painting. So if you were over here and just created the smooth line and then went back in later to create the fur, you're going to have a very distinct line that shows up underneath when you do the second coat with the fur. So just make sure you get the furs started in your first coat. And I'm smoothing out gobs. Just nice, even. It's okay that you can see the stain, the board kind of coming through. First coat is gonna happen. Probably do 2 or 3, just depending on how much coverage you want. Also, keep in mind that we will be adding like bits of gray throughout, so perfect coverage is not necessary. The variation kind of with the stain coming through works well with the gray. So I'm just going to take my time, get everything filled in. I'm going to go around the pumpkin, around the nose, around the arms. Sorry, you're gonna randomly hear there's a smoke detector. Battery is dying, and I can't reach it to make it stop. So every once in a while you're gonna hear a boop. It's a little annoying, I apologize. You can probably hear the AC running too. I tried to move further away from where the whole unit is to minimize that white noise, but it is what it is. I don't want to sit here sweating. So this little swirly bit, I'm just gonna paint over it, and I can add that back in. You wanna take your time and try to keep it there, feel free. But it's just, you're just gonna, when you paint the stem, we're just gonna go whoop. It doesn't have to be exactly to how it was drawn on. Ooh, I got a little bit of jitters. Coffee jitters. I've got one coat, pretty even. Just kind of going back through and getting any little globbies. I'm just gonna start back where I began. Second coat. As you can see, the second coat really does do better with the coverage. And I think when I grabbed a board to stain, it didn't grab the right stain. This one's a little bit darker. I think the right one is called Provincial. This one is Dark Walnut, which I don't not like. It's just a little darker. So it's gonna show through a little bit easier. Yours will likely be the Provincial, because that's what the photo will be, and I like to make sure you get what you think you're getting. Don't want to surprise you with a different stain. I'm just gonna go through and do another quick coat, just do a little spot check anywhere that's kind of dingy looking, add a little bit more. And I don't worry about my edges being absolutely perfect around the pumpkin and arms, because when I paint those, I can just go a little bit wider and kind of reshape and reform so it looks a little smoother. I don't focus on perfection throughout the whole thing because there's so many, oh my God, there's so many different little things as we work that will hide and cover little mistakes, so I don't freak out. So I got a little white paint. If you happen to get paint somewhere on your board that you don't necessarily want paint, you could try a little baby oil to get it up. Just be careful, maybe even just like a green SOS, I don't know what they're called, like the Scotch-Brite, the green scrubbies, just something not super abrasive, you can kind of get that scraped off with. If you get too deep down, you're gonna pull the stain and you don't really wanna do that. If you can catch it real quick, a little bit of water, but since it's wood, it's very porous, it does soak in quick, it's hard to catch it before it gets soaked down into the wood. But if you just kind of, so that I got off where it's not super noticeable. I can see it, but it's not gonna bother me. All right, so now I'm gonna make a little bit of gray, and it's gonna be fairly light. I'm just gonna take a little bit of my black, stir it in with a little bit of white over to the side. I don't want to mess up my whole pile of white. Something like that, and you can always put put it on, see how it's showing up, if you need it to be a little lighter or darker. Just, you know, more black for darker, more white for lighter. And I'm using the edge of my brush, like I did on the sides. I'm just gonna start kind of flicking in bits of gray. And that's pretty light. I'm gonna go all over with this light, and then I'll add some darker bits. And go right through the nose. That'll cover, that way you don't have like spots where the gray doesn't, like halos around the nose. You want the gray to kind of be everywhere throughout the beard. And yeah, this is very light. It's okay. We'll add a little bit darker gray in too, and we'll be good to go. So a little bit more black. Same thing. I'm just gonna kind of, and that's quite a bit darker. As you get too dark, I just keep going, go all over, so that way it's consistent throughout. And then you can go back in with white on top, and that will really tone it down. I will show you. I'll get a little bit more up in here. So I kind of, the stroke kind of like, so I kind of curve a little going this way on this side, curve a little this way on this side, and a little bit more up and down kind of in the middle. It helps it kind of create an illusion of being like round. And it's not just flat. So to tone that down a little, I'm just gonna scrape the excess gray off my brush and just pick up a little white. It's okay if it's a little bit gray. And you can just kind of go in over top of some of the darker areas, and it helps kind of blend and tone it down. So I'm happy with that. I'm gonna get my brush cleaned off, and then let's see. Let's work on the hat. So we're gonna do this in stripes. We're not gonna just go in and paint individual checkers. We're going to do stripes. So if you look, like this is a stripe, this is a stripe, this, and this. So we're gonna do the up and down, like what's that, vertical stripes kind of, if you want to amuse me and consider them vertical. And we're going to skip this first one, and we're going to do this second one. And it's gonna be, the whole thing is gonna be white, I think. I feel like, I'm trying to think if I did the grays first or the whites first. Yeah, let's do white. I think it's white. And we're gonna need probably 2 coats of white. Maybe a medium-sized brush. I probably have one that's a little bit smaller in here. I do, but it's got annoying little frays on the edge. So just some white paint. You're gonna come in and just paint this whole stripe. And again, nice, thin, even coat. Smooth out all the little blobbies and globbies. Don't really want my head in the view. How about we just flip it? That's better. So I've got this blue painter's tape up just so I can kind of have a better reference point of where the camera view is, so I can do my very best to stay within it, so I'm not doing anything off camera that you can't see. So that's what that's all about. You are gonna wanna make sure that you get this white sketch line covered. You don't want that showing. Flip it back. So I've got this one, and then skipping this one, I'm now gonna do this far one to the right, and it's here-ish. Trying not to rest my hand on the wet paint. So now I'm just gonna go back in, do a second coat. Okay, flip it back the right way for you. I clean out my brush, and now we are going to do some gray stripes. So we're going to work, we're not going to do these yet. We're going to start working this way. So we're going to start at the bottom, and we're going to paint this whole stripe across gray. Skip this whole stripe across gray. Skip, and then repeat. So I'm gonna make kind of a medium dark, not maybe as dark as my darkest gray in my beard here. I'm just gonna take a nice scoop of black and stir in with quite a bit of white because I don't want to run out. A little darker than that. And just keep in mind that acrylic paint always dries darker. So if it looks dark on your plate, just realize it's going to look even darker once it dries. So that seems about right. I'm gonna put it on and see what it looks like. No, a little darker. That should be good. I'm just gonna do this whole stripe. I'm going right over top of the white. Move my plate, it's probably in the way. Again, make sure you get the little white pencil line covered on the outside edges. I'm gonna skip this one and go to this one. I'm gonna flip mine upside down. You might wanna do the same to be able to reach it. And so like if you're looking at mine as reference, comparing it to yours, you want it to be going the same direction. Otherwise it might get a little confusing, but it's really just every other one. This big one here, that's the brim. Don't touch that, that's gonna be black. So it's the very first one that's not like the fold. The very first one. I skip, and I'm gonna go and do this whole little line. So now we're working on the horizontals before we did the verticals. And just trust the process. I know right now it doesn't really make sense, but you'll see in the end. And this is a lot easier than trying to make nice, pretty, perfect little squares, checkers, whatever you want to call them. I think it's easier anyway. I'm trying really hard not to get globs. It's in those little corner areas. It can be easy to get some buildup of paint. So skipping, and then this one. I just gotta stand up and make sure that I'm recording, because I'm gonna be furious if I've gone this far and it's not even working. Oh, we're good, we're good. That would just stink. So I've learned the hard way many a time. Once my battery died, I didn't have it plugged in. Another time, I didn't have it in airplane mode, and like somebody texted me or called me, and it decided that, you know, let's turn off the video and take the call or whatever. So now I just stick it in airplane mode, plug it in, all bases covered, should be no issue. So I skip in this one. Sorry, I don't mean to treat you like children, but better to prevent accidents by over-explaining. So I apologize, but I don't. Sorry, not sorry. What is that? A chunk of something. skip. And we're gonna do this stripe. Again, make sure you're going over the white bits so you get the whole stripe. This one. Okay, so you can go ahead and paint this last piece here, but it's going to be black. Once we get it all filled in, you'll see where it's going to be black. So feel free to do it gray and then cover it with gray, or sorry, do it gray and then cover it with black later. I'm just gonna leave it, have you leave it, it's just easier, no sense in. I'm just gonna go back through. So where the bare wood is, where the gray, not the bare wood, but where we painted gray, I'm just gonna give those bare wood spots another quick coat. Just the areas where and you can go over onto like, don't be particular about making it perfect. I mean, you can obviously go over onto the gray where it's on top of the white also, no big deal. I just want a little extra coverage on those woody parts where there was no like white primer. Actually, it might not even matter. I feel like they're gonna end up being black anyway. Okay, so we got our gray stripes, the horizontal ones. Now we're gonna go in and paint the remaining spots gray. You can go right through and do the whole stripe. That's what I recommend, rather than try to do little squares. I'm gonna get this whole up and down. So what you'll have left is, it'll be gray with just a few white checkers in it. Just trust me. I know it looks stupid right now. Nice thin, even paint still. The rules haven't changed, so make sure you don't have any blobbies and globbies. Just get everything spread out nice and even. And again, I'm just gonna leave the very last little bit of the hat alone because it will end up being black. Something's weird there. So there. And now I'm gonna again go back in when it was just one coat on bare wood. Kind of give that a second once over just to get nice coverage. So that's what we should have right now. Next part is black. So let's do this kind of the fold up the brim area. It's this whole big section. I'm gonna use medium brush. This one's just slightly bigger than the one I was using. The one I was using would be fine to use, but. So it's just black paint. No mixing, easy peasy. We're gonna get the brim filled. Being careful not to get messy and make sure we get that white outline, sketch, whatever we wanna call it, excuse me, covered. And nice, smooth, even paint. So while that's still wet, I'm just gonna dip my dirty brush over here in a little bit of white, kind of to the side so I don't dirty up my whole pile. And I'm just gonna kind of brush it through. It's very little paint on the brush. I'm just kind of creating some like little highlighty areas. So it's just not flat black. And honestly, I've got pretty bad glare. I can't even see what I'm doing. I'm hoping that you can see better. I gotta angle it a little so I can see it. There, now I can see it. So just a little bit, so that might even be too much. If you get too much, just dip your brush back in black, or you can just go right back over top of it. And if you get way, way, way too much, you can let it dry and then go back over top of it. But black is pretty easy to calm down. When you get it too light, it's easier to just grab a little bit more black. Okay, so I'm gonna start with a nice clean brush because I don't want any weight in it. And anywhere, so if you look at this and think anywhere gray lines intersect, so we've got our vertical stripes, horizontal stripes and our vertical stripes. So any of the like cross sections, So where they intersect. So this is one, this is one. We're gonna just paint out the little black squares. I'm gonna flip it. So flip yours so you're referencing mine and yours, going the same direction and don't get confused. Intersection of gray, right here. It's gonna create a nice little block. Right here. So there's no intersections in this area, but right here, I'm so shaky. Here. None in this row. Here. And you want to be making sure you're following like the curve of like where that gray stripe would have come through. So if you just start at the corners, you can make sure you're doing that. And then here, right there we got one. Oh, sloppy. Right here's a little one. So there's a little edge of gray here on that one too. So we gotta be careful. In these smaller ones, you may want a smaller brush. Always use what you're most comfortable with, but no, it's easier to get globbies when you use a small brush, and you're prone to getting more brush strokes in your work as well. So the bigger the brush you're comfortable with, the better, but definitely don't struggle with a brush that's too big. Skip here, and then to the side of this. And then this very last piece here on the bottom, also black. And if your edges aren't absolutely perfect, that's okay. We're gonna be adding in some little white kind of highlighty detail stuff, a little bit of black lines for like creases and folds. So any like little blips and bips you got going on, don't stress. They are going to be kind of masked or hidden with some detail line work on top. So it will all be good. So I'm cleaning out my brush now. And let's see. Let's get our pumpkin painted. We're just gonna do like the fruit of the pumpkin, not the stem. First coat is just gonna be just plain orange. Again, nice, thin, even coat. Smooth out all your blobs and globs. We'll need 2 coats of this. You don't have to stress too much about like the outline of the gloves. So if you still see white on those, that's fine. You'll get it when we paint them black. No issue. So you see I'm just kind of overlapping onto my beard area just to kind of smooth it out. Like this one's shorter, this one comes down a little bit longer, this one will be shorter. I'd rather overlap onto that white than have a weird gap. And then I can just kind of correct the shape. So I'm just gonna go back in and do another quick second coat. I'm gonna be layering lighter oranges on top, so perfect coverage is not necessary. I'm just getting, you know, the dark areas, not being super perfect, because those lighter colors are going to help fill in. So you're gonna wanna give that a little bit of time to dry. Something that happens when our paint is starting to dry and it's still kind of tacky, and we start putting more paint on top, it'll start pulling off that first base coat of paint, and then you'll have like weird holes where the wood is showing through, and then they get very challenging to cover because there's so much less paint in those spots than the rest. So we're just gonna give that, you know, just a few minutes to dry. Go ahead and pause. I'm gonna grab my blow dryer and just hit it real quick. Okay, so our lighter orange, I used my same brush, cleaned it off, dried it off. I'm not gonna be too particular. If there's a little orange still left in there, that's fine. Now I'm gonna take a great big scoop of yellow, stir it in with, you know, about the same amount of orange. So you can see we got more of a yellowy orange now. And I'm gonna take a nice medium-sized kind of scoop of white and stir that in as well. So if you get a little bit too like peachy, you might want to grab a little bit more yellow. You can always stir in a little bit more orange if needed. So that looks good to me. And everyone's is going to be a little bit different. That's fine. But if it is a little like more fleshy tone, like just add more yellow. So I'm gonna take the excess off. Just kind of scrape it on the side because I want very little paint on my brush. I don't want big gobby streaks of paint. So you can see a lot of my brush showing through, not tons of paint on it. And then you can still see like the line, like the lines, the segments of the pumpkin. I'm gonna kind of leave an edge next to that. I'm gonna do this middle one first. So I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of swoop it around. It's okay to go through his little paws. because they're gonna be black and you can see through this color perfectly fine. And I'm just very dry brush rubbing on this yellow, or orangey yellow. So there's that one. On this one, so I covered up the white line. I'm gonna leave a little space because anywhere that we leave that base coat, that dark orange color on, is gonna create shadow. So I'm gonna come over here on the outside edge and get fairly close with a little bit more paint. It's better to have less, and you have to get more than too much and have to spread it out and fill in the whole thing. So, see how I've created that line just because I left the dark there? I'm gonna do that down here. I've got quite a bit on my brush and spread and go right through his little arms. That's fine. Same over here. Leave a little gap. See how it's kind of created the segments for us. And if you ended up getting too close and you lost the line, just let it dry. Go back in with a little bit more of your orange just to kind of redefine that dark spot. I'm gonna go back in, kind of brighten up a few areas. So the more I kind of overlap onto this color, the brighter it gets. It's like more coats in certain areas. Crooked pumpkin. And it's okay to go through his arms because we're not using very much paint. It's a very light color. We can see still where those arms are supposed to be. So I kind of curve my stroke because my pumpkin is round. I curve my brush strokes. I'm gonna go one shade a little bit lighter now. So a little bit more yellow, just a little area over here. Don't need to lighten all that. And maybe a little bit more white. And then just very little bits of this lighter shade. Again, very little on your brush. You can layer it on. You don't need to glob it. I'm gonna clean my brush. And then do just teeny tiny bit of white for a little highlight. So same idea, tiny bits of paint, kind of dab it off to the side so you don't have much on there. Maybe a little swoop up here. A little swoop here. And I just keep going back, get a little bit at a time. A little in here. Swoop over here, sure, why not? See how it's very dry brushed. I have like next to no paint on there. We'll leave that be for a minute. We can work on, let's see, let's get our nose done. And we're gonna mix up that burnt orange color, just a tiny bit of that mixed in with quite a bit of white. We're gonna make like a pale skin tone. So let me get a nice clean spot of white and just stir in little bits of this orange at a time. Doesn't take much, and again, it does dry darker. All acrylic paint dries darker than it seems. Maybe go a little bit more. And I'm gonna fill in his nose. And again, overlap a little bit onto what's there so we can get a nice round shape. nice smooth even paint. We will go back in for a couple coats. We'll let that dry. Meanwhile, let's paint the stem. We're gonna make brown. And brown, we are going to mix orange, that burnt orange, and black. It's almost equal parts of each, maybe a little bit more of the orange than black. But you'll see once you get them stirred together, what a nice shade of brown it makes. So I could go a little darker. I got brown, but it's kind of a orangey brown. So I like that. Kind of chocolatey. So I'm gonna do the big area of the stem with this larger brush. Then I will switch to something smaller so I can get that little curly bit. For now, I'm just gonna get the base of it done. Maybe I will switch to a smaller brush. Smaller brush. How about, my small brushes suck. How about something like this? Make sure you get those globs, like I said earlier. Smaller brush. The paint likes to pool around the edges. And get that smoothed out. And this comes up, and we're just gonna, something like that. Blobs and blobs. So there's my stem. Let that dry. Come back here and do another coat on our schnoz. And that is again our light fleshy color. I'm gonna take just a teeny tiny bit of this darker orange kind of over here, make a little bit darker shade, and then using the edge, the side of my brush, I'm gonna kind of swoop down, kind of create a little bit of a shadow. Let that dry, and then I think one more coat and we should be good there. Meanwhile, let's paint his arms and his shoes. And we're gonna do black. Whatever size brush works for you, kind of this medium one for me. I can get the little fingers, the thumb, and it's just black paint. So you're gonna do the arms, hands, whatever, and his shoes. Again, overlap onto what's already painted there, so we don't have any gaps. Nice, smooth, even paint. It's really important that you get all your globs smoothed out on the arms, because when we do stripes, we need that black to be dry. And if there's lots of globbies, it's gonna take a really long time for you to get in there when it's dry. Little boots. And I, again, overlap. Yeah, really nice knot right there. Make sure you get that white pencil covered. I'm going to take a little bit of white while the boots are dry on my dirty brush. It can even be gray, whatever, because it basically turns gray once I get my dirty brush in it. And I'm just going to blend a little bit of that across the top. Don't need a lot on your brush. You just kind of want to get a little highlight across the top of the boot. If you get too much, add more black. If you get way too much, let it dry a little. I'm gonna go back and do another coat on my nosy nose. Should be final coat. So if you ended up getting a little too much of that darker skin color, this is when you can like thin it out, like go right on top, and you end up with a thinner line. I'm going to take just a little bit of white, kind of brush it across the top, make it a little bit lighter. Can't really tell that I did that. Maybe a little bit more white. Fabulous. So I'm gonna go to my stem. I'm gonna use my little brush. I'm gonna add a little highlight on my stem. Just gonna kind of sketch it on. If you get too much, go back and take your brown. I got brown on my brush. You can just kind of calm it down. I've got glare. I can't really see what I'm doing. So we got our pumpkin done. Okay, base work is all done. Everything is filled in. Now we just have a bunch of little fun details to work on. I'm gonna do stripes on my gloves. So I'm just gonna be using white paint. So because the arms, we want to help give the impression that they're round, when we do stripes, we're not just gonna go straight. We're going to curve. And if you do it with just a wet brush, you can kind of practice. I don't know if you'll be able to see on camera, but I just have water on my brush, and like you could kind of get an idea of like the curve. So the lines curve. I don't know if you can see that, but I'm gonna do it with white, and it's very little paint on my brush, and it's like the width of my small brush, and that's wet. And I'm gonna do a nice curved line. I got way too much water. Start over. I don't want soupy watery paint. Try again. There we go. Just skip a little. Do another one. And you see how they curve? It's like the same curve as the upper part where it kind of comes out of the body. Fit one more. Same on this one, except opposite direction. So for guide, look over here, this curved line. You could start right up here too if you want, if that's easier. I like to kind of figure out where my hand is gonna start. And once we get one coat, you're gonna go back in and do one more quick kind of coat on top, just so that it gets nice coverage and looks nice and white. Ooh, I'm shaky. All right, maybe that one needs a little more. Okay, so now we have all the fun little outliney things to do. I'm gonna use a long skinny brush for a few things. This is called a liner brush. I stick it in my mouth. You stick it in your water, that way it's nice and pointy. I'm gonna use black first, and I like to add a little bit of water into my paint. I just stir it right in. So I dipped it in my jar and just stirred a little bit of water in. And I'm gonna do some swoops around my pumpkin. And let's see, I'm gonna do some sketchy lines kind of around the outside of my hat. I'm gonna create kind of like wrinkles in here. I don't really like this brush for that because it's too long. Maybe some wrinkles in here. Maybe a little bit extra sketchy up here. I'm done with my black, and then I'm gonna hit the white pretty good. I'm gonna use the edge of my medium brush, and find it, for my white things. So I'm gonna use it on its edge like this, and that's because I've got a nice brush. It's new. I can get a nice thin line with that. So I'm just gonna get some white over here in a nice clean area. Just gonna pat it so I don't have gobs. I'm gonna start kind of on the brim. Do a little sketchy business. Paint. I'm gonna come down the edge. I'm gonna be careful of my black lines because that will make me mad. I like to rest my hand because I'm more stable. I think I'm dry right here. And just quick little line down the edge. Okay. Do little swoops on the boots. And do a little swoop on the nose. And some little detail-y work up into the hat. So very little paint, so I get nice thin line. Kind of press it out on the side of my plate, so I have this nice thin, as you can see, nice thin brush. Just kind of come in and add some little lines in there. Careful you don't kind of run into where you added black. You don't want to smudge that. And I think we are finished. I'm gonna give it a once over kind of look, make sure I've got everything. Oh yeah, that looks so cute. I love this one. You do have pre-drilled holes. I will have in your kits a piece of jute. The best way to get that in is I hold it. I don't even know if you can see but I go through the back. I twist, push through the back, the other long side, push, twist through the back, and then on the front, you have your knots, kind of figuring out how long you want it, and then I just double knot in the front, and then you could trim off the excess. I have one right here, hold on. Got this one. Many of you have done other classes with me and know the deal with the jute. So you go through the back, tie in the front, and you just trim it off. You want at least, two or three knots so that you don't have to worry about it pulling through. I usually end up having to do 3 because my first 2 don't land on each other. So by the time I get the third one, I get one nice big knot. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed painting this with me. Please share your finished work. I love seeing them. You can private message me on Facebook, Paint Willy-Nilly, or just post to the wall. I'm pretty sure I have it set where you can just post to the wall. All right. Thanks.